It is an honor for me to welcome Mike Detillier into the show. You've heard him on Saturdays with Mr. Bitter. You've heard him on our airwaves a couple times. Every time he's on, he always brings just pure gold in terms of football information. So, welcome to the show, Mike Detillier. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
And before we get into all the football things, we've been kind of talking about Christmas-themed stuff all day long. Mike, do you have a favorite Christmas movie, one that's kind of your go-to?
Oh, wow. Man, I'm so occupied this time of year. I really can't say I do. I did watch Bad Santa, though, the other day, just for entertainment purposes. But I can't say I really do have a go-to Christmas movie. Though I have a 2.5-year-old grandchild that watches everything Christmas, so that's been occupied my time the last couple of years and watching all the little Christmas shows that come on. So I get to watch that with her, but other than that, I really don't.
As he said, though, very busy man this time of year as the NFL season is starting to move towards the playoffs. You also have NFL draft research going on, which is something that Mike has always been very knowledgeable about. And that's where I want to start, Mike. And I know there's a local player here that Cajun fans cannot wait to see have his name called whenever the draft starts. Elijah McGuire. Man had 3,000-yard rushing seasons, has incredible hands out of the backfield, even helped out on special teams at points. And I was kind of expecting him, or I am expecting him to go somewhere between the fourth, maybe sixth round. How do you think he projects to the next level, and where do you kind of see him falling?
I would put him as a late third, early fourth round pick. I think that this is just a hunch that I have, but I've been doing this 30 years, so that I do see a little bit of movement toward picking offensive linemen and running backs a little earlier than normal. And that's just because I think the league is starting to change. There is fewer and fewer dominant quarterbacks, and you want to try to have that balance of a running game. And so I could see Elijah going late third into the fourth. Having watched him in high school at Vanderbilt Catholic, which is maybe 15 minutes from where I live, he was a terrific quarterback. And doing the shows with Billy, and doing the shows with James and WWL, Matt, everywhere I was in South Louisiana, I could not believe he was not more heavily recruited than what he was. There was maybe some questions about could he get eligible, which I think was a little bit overblown. To be honest with you, I tried to get my old buddy Curtis Johnson to sign him at Tulane. I did everything I could. I grew up in Lafourche Parish, and Curtis is a St. Charles guy, so we've known each other for quite some time. Curtis just would not do it, and he ends up at UL, and sometimes you're in the right place at the right time, and it was the right spot for him. And I've always told Elijah that he's Louisiana's version of Reggie Bush. He can do the same sort of things Reggie Bush could do. In essence, as a receiver coming out the backfield, an edge runner, he runs pretty solid between the tackles, great field vision, can help out on special teams. Maybe not as flashy as Reggie or as fast out in the open field, but it's pretty close. And then last week I got to talk to him for some time right before the bowl game, and he was telling me he's going to Dallas and will work out with four-time Olympic sprint champion Michael Johnson in the offseason. So trying to get himself a little faster for the combine and also his pro day. And I know one thing, he's motivated, he's very focused, and he'll have a nice NFL career. He's a guy that I think will split time as a running back. He will not be a full-time back, but I think with a big back, you can see where that combination could really work. And, on the bayou here, I would say he's probably been one of the best 3 or 4 football players I've seen in the last 15 years. And yet 4 years past him coming out of Vanderbilt, there's another young man who's a little smaller in Amik Robertson from Thibodeau High School, who's played wide receiver, cornerback, safety, a little bit of running back, a little bit of quarterback, has very similar type skills, other than the fact I think he'll play on defense at the collegiate level. And he's already verbally committed to Louisiana Tech, although I think when it's all said and done, my old friend Bebe Ogeron will give him a scholarship and he'll go to LSU. So, I'm thrilled for Elijah and what he's been able to accomplish. And he can do a lot of things, and the more you can do, the better you have a chance to get picked higher. His versatility is his strength. His speed as a runner on the edge, his receiving skills, his return skills, all are major positives for him. And I think he's going to have a really good NFL career. Sometimes it's where you end up in the NFL says a lot about your career, but I certainly am thrilled to see him get this opportunity.
And just in terms of the character he has, too, from every interview we've ever had with him, great kid. I know he took a lot of pride in the fact that he graduated in 3.5 years, was the first member of his family to collect a college degree. And you've said you've been in this a long time. That stuff goes an incredible long way whenever you can add character on top to a lot of skill set.
Well, yeah, I think today, maybe 30 years ago, there were some things you could do as a player and you could get away with it, and it wasn't splashed on SportsCenter or on Fox or whatever within minutes. Today, you can't get away with those things. It happens. There's a camera, there's a picture everywhere for everything. And so that goes a long way. And eventually, guess what? You got to slide that folder to the owner and say, this is the guy we're going to pick. And that owner's got to peel that back and say, well, okay, this is the type of guy I'm looking for. I don't want someone with every year there's a couple guys that get picked early with character questions. And that's always great debate on talent and character. Now, the more talented you are, the more chances you get. Now, that's not fair, but life ain't fair. But with Elijah, you have no worries about that from a character standpoint. And also, I want a guy that football means something to him. You're not playing it for a paycheck. You are to a certain extent, but football's got to mean something to you. This is a difficult profession. It's not a lifetime job. And you want to try to make it, if you want to make this part of your lifestyle, you have to be able to really work at it to extend your career. For a lot of players I see today, and even yesteryear, they love the game to get paid, but they don't put great effort into making themselves a better player. One thing with Elijah, he makes do with everything he's got, and he gives you everything on every play, and he goes out and really work hard to get the most out of his ability.
Visiting with Mike Detillier, NFL draft and just football expert in general. And Mike, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, so if you haven't got to see too much of the tape of this guy, you can go ahead and say so. But there's another player from the Cajuns that I think might have a chance to even slide into the late rounds, if not get a call almost immediately from a team if he doesn't get drafted in those late rounds. Linebacker Otha Peters, who's a guy who was actually an SEC player at the beginning of his career, transferred, had to sit out, and then played for the Cajuns, was really a tackling machine this year, created some turnovers. Do you think he has a chance to make it to the next level?
Yeah, and I scouted Otha when he came out of high school before he signed on with Kentucky. And he was, he was in that second rung of players that year, and he ended up there going to Arkansas, and it didn't really work out for him. I think with him is going to depend, and some people are looking at him as a weak side linebacker, and some teams will look at him as an inside guy in a 3-4 alignment. The one thing with Otha he's going to have to improve on is his ability to play in reverse. Up the field, in the chase ability, speed to the ball carrier, he's got it. And I think he can help out on special teams. The big thing today for most linebackers is the ability to cover one-on-one downfield. Now, they all say they've done it, but how well they've done it is all in question. I think Otha's got a shot to be a late-round pick. I really do. How well he works out certainly will be important, and he's going to need to work with the weights a little bit more, physically get stronger. But I like him as an athlete, and he has got really quick instincts to the ball carrier. He's terrific in the forward position. How well he's going to work out in reverse is going to be the catch for him. But I think while a lot of teams would have interest is his aggressive nature toward the ball, and he can help out on special teams immediately for a team.
And you mentioned football meaning something to him. That guy's got an edge. Football is life. So good news possibly for Otha Peters if he can have a good workout, maybe hear his name called, but I still think he'll be in a camp somewhere even if he doesn't get his name called. Mike Detillier is our guest. And Mike, shifting our focus down the road to Baton Rouge area, Leonard Fournette, everyone knows, is going to be a very, very high draft pick, possibly even top 5. I think definitely top 10. This decision he's making to sit out the bowl game, do you think that affects him in any way, shape, or form?
Zero. The pros could care less. All they worried about is what he can do for them. And if anybody's got an issue with it, all they have to do is look at what happened with Jalen Smith from Notre Dame a year ago, who tears up a knee in a bowl game severely, and his career may be over. He didn't play this year. The Cowboys did pick him in round 2. And he's hopeful he can come back and play. But this is fresh in the minds of a lot of young men who are now being told this by attorneys and agents. Look what happened to Jalen. Where are your tears for Smith of what happened to him when he got hurt that severely? So what I can't tell you is this going to be a long-term effect or short-term. Where it would make a big difference is if a player decided to sit out a Final Four game. That's where the rubber would meet the road, and I think eventually you'll see that happen in college football. But it won't hurt Leonard at all. I still think he'll be a top 5 pick. He's been helped because of the last 2 years. Todd Gurley, coming off a severe knee injury, went 10th overall to the Rams. Last year, this spring, Ezekiel Elliott went 4th overall to the Cowboys, and the success of both of them, and especially Zeke. And so I think in this draft class, which is really heavy at running back, with not only Fournette, but you got Dalvin Cook at Florida State and Christian McCaffrey, who also is going to sit the game out from Stanford, along with a host of other young men at that running back position. I see them edged up a little bit because they're being helped by the success of Gurley and Ezekiel Elliott. And I don't think his decision to sit out is going to make any difference. And I would never criticize him at all. My only critique about Leonard is, why sign with an agent? Why make that announcement? Why couldn't you wait 2.5 weeks to announce that you've signed with Jay-Z's group? You could have been with your team, been with, a team leader, and gone to the bowl game, and you knew you weren't going to play, but be there for the support of your teammates. That part I didn't get. I don't know why you had to make that announcement now that you've signed with Jay-Z's group, because basically now, in doing so, you become a professional, and you got to get away from the team. You can't be part of that group anymore. So other than that, I got no gripe at all that he wouldn't play. I work with Boo Schick-Snyder at Thibodeau Regional Medical Center, and Boo has trained over 60 Olympic athletes and 58, I think, All-American track athletes. Right after the season was over with, he told me that injury takes 6 to 7 weeks to heal, which puts it right on the cusp of could he play or not. And his guess at that time was that Leonard would not play in the game against Louisville, that he felt as though that because of the injury, that although a lot of times after 2-3 weeks, your ankle still feels pretty good, but it's the rotation of that ankle, because it is actually a tear when you have that high ankle sprain. You feel okay until you start to cut and bend on that ankle. Then it gives you a lot of issues. But I don't have one problem with Leonard not playing in that bowl game. And I know one thing, the dude that's taking his place, he's pretty doggone good too, because I do think that when those favorites come out for the Heisman Trophy in the spring, Darius Geis is going to be in that group of 5.
Right there with you. Darius Geis has been beyond impressive in whenever Fournette's gone out, or if they've just decided to use him instead. But, Mike, I want to ask you about a player I've been in love with all season long, Jamal Adams, who is probably one of maybe even 4 LSU guys that might go in that first round along with Tre'Davious White and Kendall Beckwith. But Jamal Adams, I love just as a pure safety, a guy that can go in and really help you out immediately on the defensive side of the ball. My question to you is, does he remind you of anyone you've studied or you've covered that's went out to the NFL level? And really, how well do you think he does project to be an immediate impact type player?
He's going to be an immediate impact player in the NFL. Great instincts to the football. He's much better playing closer to the line of scrimmage than in the coverage part of the game. But what you see today in the NFL is a hybrid position of safeties playing kind of like a linebacker, very close to the line of scrimmage. We've seen it a lot with Arizona with Deion Buchanan. We saw Kenny Vaccaro do it a lot with the Saints. And you start to see there's a lot of that happening in the NFL. I think Jamal Adams is a top 20 pick. Now, he's not a great cover guy. He's above average on the one-on-one cover skills. But what he's got is something I can't teach, ball skills. He can find the football quickly in flight and make a play for it, like an offensive player. So I think that's a real help for him. I know that he will win the second season of workouts. He's a tremendous athlete. And Coach O and I were talking just maybe a week or so ago, and he was telling me, on this football team, there ain't a handful of guys that can do athletically what Jamal Adams can do. And just his intelligence, his football smarts. He knows what to do, and he knows what you should be doing. And that means a lot. He's a chirper, which means he's a communicator in the secondary, and that certainly is going to help him out. Well, I think Leonard will be a top 5 pick. I think Jamal will be a top 20 pick in the draft. And I think for LSU, with Tre'Davious White and Ethan Posick, you have 2 players that straddle the late first, early second round as far as players are concerned. So you'll have 2 first-round picks, and White and Posick will straddle the second in between late first and early second. Kendall Beckwith will probably be a third-round pick. Now he's coming off a knee injury.
True.
And he never was a great cover guy to begin with. So I think he's more of a thumper in the middle than a guy that you can leave out there one-on-one on the coverage part of the game. But really good football player, and he helped himself out tremendously coming back for his senior season.
Yeah, and it can't hurt how all their former LSU buddies are playing in the pros right now, and you got guys like Deion Jones doing what he's doing so early on in his career.
And Quan. I mean, look, you watch Quan Alexander out with Tampa Bay and see the type of impact he's got. And then this year to see the development of Duke Riley, who came out of nowhere. He was a guy that was most people looking at maybe as a free agent type player, and he had played a lot on special teams, and yet he's come through in a big way. He's gone to the Senior Bowl. So it's been kind of the trend a little bit. A lot of these guys come in and kind of wait their time, and then all of a sudden they explode the last 2 years for LSU. And you see it with Duke, you see it with Kendall, and you've seen it with Debo, with Quan Alexander. Now, Quan, a little bit, that had to do with injuries. And certainly Kevin Minter, who had a real strong game against the Saints. Now, he was the man, so to speak, coming off the bus. Hasn't had a great NFL career, but you can see he's a good football player, too. So for LSU, that's been a real plus for him. And even before Kevin was Perry Riley, who has had some really good seasons in the NFL also, as both an outside linebacker and also as a Mike guy.
It's definitely a strong fraternity they've built in the NFL ranks. Mike Detillier is our guest. Shifting our focus to the Saints now, Mike, I want to ask you kind of a big picture question to kind of start off. Then we might pick some points apart. And it has to do with the losses that have occurred over the last 2 years, really, the decline that you've seen in this franchise. In your opinion, is it more an on-the-field issue, or is it more of a front office issue with some of the decisions they've decided to make in free agency, in the draft, and whatnot? Has it been more of a front office issue or an on-the-field issue?
It's both. While you were sitting in the back of the limousine waving to the fans after the 2009 Super Bowl, you went 5 years from 2010 to 2014, 5 drafts, you end up with 5 players. Name me a significant free agent you've got out of that. 0. You think about it, Kenyon Coleman, Vernon Butler, Champ Bailey. You can Brandon Browner, C.J. Spiller. I mean, it's been whiff and whiff and whiff. Now, Keenan Lewis came through for you, and then he got hurt. But of all the guys, really, Lewis gave you the most bang for the buck that you got. And again, so it was poor decision-making you did come draft time and also in veteran free agency. And you tried to change your defense around a couple of different times. And it's peculiar because I've heard Ryan say that it was Sean's idea to do. And so here you got your head coach now kind of piddling pieces all across the board. So there's really been no set plan in that time frame to try to rebuild this team. Now they're in a catch-up mode where I think this year's draft, I think, is really good. When you look at what they've been able to get out of Sheldon Rankins, Michael Thomas has been just terrific. Von Bell's going to end up being a really good player. David Onyemata, I think, eventually will be a really good inside player. And then you picked up Daniel Lasco, who has shown when he's healthy can really help your football team out, and you throw in Will Lutz, the kicker. You've done a pretty good job there. The year before is still questionable with Andrus Peat, who you see up and down, up and down. Kakaha's been injury-prone. Stephon Anthony had a great rookie season. Didn't do anything this year. Marcus Murphy's been a disappointment as a return man. P.J. Williams showed a lot of promise, and then he gets the severe concussion issue. Damian Swan's been hurt, time after time. So that's still a questionable draft of 2015. 2016 looks good. So you're in a catch-up mode, and you change your philosophy. Now, they will not tell you, but it happened. This team was looking to get football players, good, solid players. They went to a metric system, a certain height, certain weight, certain speed, bench press, that sort of thing, and they got caught up in the numbers from 2010 to 2014. And in that time frame, they hit on one guy, Jimmy Graham. He was the only metrics player they hit on, and he's not on this team anymore. So it's a combination of both. Your team has gotten older. You're in a transition period. The Saints don't like to tell you they're rebuilding, but it's the honest truth. They're in a rebuilding mode right now. Because if I'm buying a suite, the last thing I want to hear is the coach say I'm rebuilding. Because if I'm a suite purchaser or somebody who's given up a lot to buy tickets, I'll say when you rebuild, then I'll get in line to buy the tickets again. So it is what it is. The Saints are fighting for mediocrity. They in with about 24 other teams in the NFL that will finish from 6-10 to 8-8 in that range. That's where the chunk of the NFL is. You probably got 4 really good teams, 4 really bad teams, and everybody else right stuck in the middle.
And you have to definitely watch trends. When you see a team like Tampa Bay with Jameis Winston that is clearly improving within your own division, you got to kind of look at yourself and have some, mirror time, I will call it. But, Mike, pulling on your expertise and your years in the business, whenever we look into the offseason, because I think we all kind of know the postseason dream for the Saints might still be numerically feasible, but that's pretty far out of touch. So looking towards the offseason, whether it be in free agency, what do you think their game plan should be, positions of need, and specifically in terms of the draft?
I think they'll go out and get a veteran cornerback, starter type, to play opposite Delvin Breaux. I think that's a major concern for them. But I think their number one need is an edge pass rusher. But to get those type guys, you are going to have to spend a tremendous amount of money to do it. So that may have to wait till draft time. The other part is you got to rebuild your right offensive line. God bless them. What Jari Evans and Zach Strief have done have been outstanding for this team since 2006. And Jari Evans will go down as the second-best offensive lineman this football team's ever had. Only Willie Roaf really hit more heights than he did. But Father Time rings everybody's bell, and you got to rebuild your right side. So what I look at it would be as a pass rush, defensive end, outside linebacker, cornerback, right guard, right tackle, and hopefully the football gods here, but bring a return man to this game. Ever since Darren Sproles was dealt off in a issue of money, that was the only reason they traded him off, because he was making too much, and they felt he was a descending player, which goes to show that they didn't really calculate that real well either. They have not had a major impact return man. And I think that this football team is in desperate need of a guy that can change the scoreboard every time he touches the football. And they have not had that element on this team. And so those would be the areas I would look for to try to rebuild this team, to try to get someone that certainly could change the scoreboard in a heartbeat with a kickoff or a punt return. So I'd say edge pass rusher, right guard, right tackle, cornerback, and I think that they'll go after a veteran cornerback in free agency, and certainly a return man.
And last one for you, Mike, and I might be reaching. I know it might be a little too far because a lot of stuff flexes whenever it comes in the draft, but is there someone that if you were on the Saints board that you would be dreaming, hoping would fall to you around your range? Is there a guy that you think would be a really, really good fit for them in the first round?
I want a dude that can put somebody on his backside. and that's a guy at Alabama by the name of Tim Williams, who's from Baton Rouge. And that would be a guy I would have a tremendous interest in. Turn him loose off the edge and get after the quarterback. And so, that's going to be a lot of theories on where to go come draft time, if it's offensive line, if it's cornerback. But the one thing that's really difficult to get other than quarterback is a pass rusher. And ask any college or professional coach, and that'll come out of their mouth real quickly. So one of the guys that I think could be there when they pick anywhere from 8 through 15, somewhere in that range, I think could well be Tim Williams from University of Alabama, who is an intriguing edge pass rusher.
Mike Detillier.
When he's on, he can flip the switch.
Mike Detillier, NFL draft expert, football analyst, and all-around good guy, so sharing with his time. Mike, thank you so much for coming on our airwaves today, and enjoy the holiday season.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, buddy. Take care.
Thank you so much. You too. Mike Detillier was our guest. Boy, was that good stuff. Just pure gold.